Hey, this is LOA Today, the Law of Attraction show. Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Joel Elston here. It's Thursday, October 27th, 2016. And we have a little bit of good news this week. Well, it's half the good news anyway. We now have a way for you to subscribe to our podcast. After all these years, we finally got this going, and that's my fault, Joel. I mean, I finally stopped putting it off and actually got it up there. But people can go to our website, loatoday.net, and you'll see the login right there. Not login, but subscription link to subscribe to the podcast, and it will subscribe using whatever podcast software your device uses. So this is great. This is exciting for us, Joel.
I'm super excited, and as much help as I've been for our audience, which is none, no help at all on this process, other than encouraging you to do it.
Very encouraging. I appreciate the encouragement.
So it's I own having no skills in this process ahead of time. But I'm so happy that you have gotten us this far. And I use podcasts right now where I've cut out the news, and we've talked about that before. And in the beginning, I just stopped watching the news. Well, over the last several months, I added positive psychology, positive thinking, motivational speeches. And one of those through YouTube, and I find positive podcasts that I download, and throughout the day in my free time, I listen to those, and I use it as continuing boost during the day. So the fact that we now have that available, hopefully people will be able to use it the same way. Our ultimate goal has always been with doing the radio show is, first of all, number one, you and I get a lot out of doing this every week. But second is I envision this concept of law of attraction, positive thinking. I would love to see a morning drive time show where we literally were able to have incoming calls, help people with the law of attraction, how to apply it in their life in a beneficial way. And imagine walking in the door to work when you've just been uplifted with an incredible story of someone using the law of attraction, instead of listening to your morning show or the news with whatever our amazing presidential candidates are talking about.
Nice descriptive adjective. I like that. Amazing. That's very good.
They are amazing. I'm amazed every time I see a snippet come through. I'm amazed that they're our candidates. But it is an exciting time for LOA Today. It is part of our evolution. So great job on your part. And as our audience starts to tune in and subscribe, hopefully you'll see the benefit of listening to our content, or positive content, and our content is positive, throughout the day. There are several things. If I've had several of the podcasts I've listened to multiple times from other providers that help me when I get in difficult times mentally, and it helps me pull me through, helps me come out on the other side, and I hope we can do the same for people using that new system for us as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the main things that drives us to do this, besides the fact, like you said, that we get so much out of this personally. I mean, this is fun. This is something I look forward to every week on Saturday when we record this, and I know you do too. But it would also be great to be able to help other people. That's why I share your dream of being able to do the morning drive show. And wouldn't that be great, having people calling in and just talking about all this stuff, positive psychology and so forth. And you're 100% right. I mean, wouldn't that be also great to replace all the negativity of the news and our wonderful presidential candidates and all that? Good stuff that could actually be a whole lot better by staying on the positive side. So, yeah, this is a big step forward. The only thing that's missing, I said it was halfway done. The part that isn't done yet is I've tried to submit it to Apple iTunes so people can find it through their iTunes store. And I keep running into an error whenever I do that. And I've isolated all the errors I can find, and it doesn't seem to be at my end, so it seems to be at Apple's end. And I've put out a couple of feelers. I'm hoping Apple's going to resolve this really, really soon, because I'm pretty sure it's at their end, not at my end. But hey, I've made mistakes before. It could be at my end too. But everything I've checked against says, yeah, you're fine. So I get that often enough, Joel, and I think I'm fine.
Well, yes, and we'll get there. The fact that we've made this progress, or you made this progress, has been a great step forward. And I want to provide a tool, an additional tool, because the law of attraction is at work in all of our lives. The key is understanding how to use it to your benefit. The law of attraction has no emotion. It doesn't care which is right, which is wrong. It is. What you put out there, what you're feeling is what you're bringing. We say that every week in some form or fashion. This week I have a unique sort of update on it's not actually a new client I was having, but I saw this client twice this week. And the first time, it's a female, she's 27, and had 3 years of college. She wanted to be a school teacher. Her boyfriend broke up with her, and a bunch of chain of events happened that sort of got her out of school. And she was doing substitute teaching and feeling her life. Her family brought her to me to sort of bring things along. And we sat down and we started talking, and I asked her to tell me what was going on. And and I didn't write it down. I didn't start counting until I realized that I needed to start counting. But she used my boyfriend did, blaming her boyfriend for all this stuff. Then she hasn't had this boyfriend for like 2 years, but it was obviously her focus on everything still. And by the time I started counting, she mentioned him in our 45 minutes before I started talking. She mentioned him 39 times, and always in the context of what he did to her. And I'm not defending him. He's not a nice guy, but that's not the point.
Yeah, the point is she's stuck on something that ended 2 years ago, and yet it's still she's focusing on once a minute.
Right.
Wow.
And so that was her world. So, I interrupted her. She could have talked for 3 hours, giving me this story. And I said, please tell me, without using your boyfriend's name or relating to him, what you are going through. And she looked at me and she said, she started to talk. She said, well, everything I'm going through is because of him. And I said, so you've given him all this power. And I actually turned it around on her by the time. I said, you are feeling this because you're allowing this. You are responsible for these feelings. She literally stormed out of my office when I called her responsible. And so
it's hard. It is hard to face it sometimes.
And as she's going, I apologize. I'm just trying to, and she just wouldn't hear it, and she left. So I thought, well, there goes a client.
Yeah, right.
About 2 hours later, I get a text. She said, I probably needed to hear what you had to say. Can we talk again this week? So,
wow, good for her.
So Thursday morning she came in, and we started off. She said, I apologize for walking out. She said, deep down, when I left, I was so mad at you for saying that, but it hit home for so real. And so we got into the understanding that I explained to her. She brought into it very quickly. I said, you are responsible for your feelings. No one can make you feel anything unless you allow it. You are in charge of your perspective. I said, we will not use anyone else's name the rest of the session, and we will talk about what you can do to change your life. And she said, well, I'll try, but it's really hard. She said, the last 2 years since I broke up with that person we're not going to mention, it has occupied every moment. I dropped out of school. I put my life on hold. I did everything as I focused on that. I said, exactly. That's our problem. She went to a psychiatrist who gave her an antidepressant, which did nothing. She went to a psychologist that told her she needed, I forget what she told her, something that didn't work. But now this is the first thing that started resonating with her. I said, there's nothing wrong with you. It's you are stuck on a narrative that will haunt you forever until we stop this.
Can I just vent for 1 second?
Sure.
I just want to send a note out, a verbal note out to all psychologists and psychiatrists, particularly psychiatrists, because they're the ones who prescribe stuff, who are in the field of helping people with issues of this kind or of various kinds, many of which are quite serious. It seems to me that the standard behavior of a psychiatrist is to issue a prescription, usually an antidepressant. And I would like to ask all psychiatrists to please stop doing that. That's all. End of message.
Well, and Walt, that was the message to tell you that unfortunately, and getting on a side note, and as you know, my ADD's really good at doing that.
It's probably my fault. I helped you do it.
You did. You walked me right down that path. You know what you're. but with psychiatrists, the profession has changed years ago. I have a colleague who is a mentor and a hero of mine. It's Dr. Sherman Master, and he is a longtime psychiatrist in the Richmond area, well known nationally. And he is the only psychiatrist that I am aware of that spends an hour with each patient.
Really?
Yes, every time.
Wow.
He provides counseling and medication if needed. He is anti-medication unless it is needed. I also know
that's a rare psychiatrist. He deserves applause, man.
Also, 84, very sharp, still in practice. I wish he would train people, but the problem is the way insurance works is he doesn't take insurance because he's been at it so long. He has a long following. But if he were a new doctor, he would get reimbursed either $75 or $100 or whatever the fee is an hour from insurance, whether he spent 5 minutes or an hour with a patient.
Wow.
So I have another acquaintance, he's not a friend I know, who I was at a dinner with one evening, he's a psychiatrist, who was bragging that he saw that day in an 8-hour period, he averaged 16 clients in an hour.
Oh, jeez.
And each one was billed, he was able to bill $75 for each of those.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was proud of himself. He walks in, tell me your symptoms, try this antidepressant, and we will come back in 2 weeks. If it's not working, we'll change it. That's what he did.
You know, for non-doctors, for people who don't have the medical degree, those are called malware distributors.
Yes. Yes. And so now that we go out of our dream sequence,
let me get back. Right. Sorry, boy. I mean, that's way off track. But oh my goodness.
So, this lady did go to a psychiatrist who his only response was try an antidepressant, and that actually helped reinforce when the antidepressant didn't work. It helped reinforce her inner belief that she was really screwed up. And the truth is, an antidepressant can't fix the thoughts that you're in control of. It can't. It just doesn't happen. And so what she started doing, once we started talking, we were able. We worked on changing her inner dialogue. What is this about? And that isn't something that can happen very quickly. It is a process that you have to force it in the beginning. But I said, we have to stop allowing this X person in your life to occupy all this space, because you have created. And when I said this, she had this like huge flow of tears. And once I said, you have created the feeling of lack and loneliness, and you are repeating that daily. And once she heard that, and it resonated with her, a ton of tears came out. Wow. And she told me that she had isolated from her friends. Her mom has tried many things. And so my remedy was, I said, you need to call your friends together, explain what has happened, and decide to move forward. I want this to be the best weekend you've had in 2 years. And I want it to, and I don't care what you do. And we need to start having fun. We need to start laughing. We need to start rewriting the inner dialogue of your life. You will always be the woman that this man dumped, and you in an inappropriate way, and he cheated on her and did all these other things. I said, that's who you're going to be, or you can put a period behind that and let's start forward. And we use the inner dialogue talk, and I there's a term called neuro-linguistic programming, which is basically NLP. It's a classic old school mentality of there's many ways to do it, but it basically is creating a script for yourself and a mantra and believing it and calling yourself out on the negative thoughts. And I got a text from her last night about 11:30. I was in bed, but I got it this morning, and I'll read it to you right now. It said, "The greatest 2 days of my life, maybe ever, amazing."
Wow.
That's all she said. But the concept that nothing changed, she'd been to all these other people. And it isn't that I'm this genius that came up with this, because I didn't invent any of it, by the way. I'm just relaying the message. But the fact that nobody along the way had told her that you're in charge of all this. There's not a pill or the psychologist that she was seeing, the counselor, not the psychiatrist, the counselor, kept trying to figure out at what age was she molested. Now, she was never molested, but that counselor was determined to figure out when that happened. And it was frustrating because she kept saying, I'm pretty confident that never happened. He goes, you're covering it up. That's what all this is about. And it's just like, wow, it's this whole idea that the victimhood mentality that is sold by psychology and a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, the medical world, when in reality, she simply had a tool that was at her disposal from day one. Just like the Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy could click her heels together at any time and go home.
Yeah, right.
It's the same thing. You can change your perspective at any point in the day. You don't need a magical event for that to happen.
Well, it is a magical event, though, when you do change the perspective. That part is magical because it's amazing how many things change.
Right. In fact, one of the things, though, and not to argue semantics with you, it is a law. It's not magic. It's a law. It's what happens. It is built in. It's no different than if you get a virus in your body, the body's incredibly strong. It goes and attacks it. It's what it does. From an outside, it does look like magic to the outside world. My body can heal itself. That's magic. It's just what happens. And this is such a great tool that is so underutilized by so many people, and it is compounded daily. We talk about the negativity of the news. We talk about the negativity of the presidential campaign. And the world, the feeling that the world is coming to an end is what they're selling. All this is falling apart on us, and it's unraveling at every end. That's what they're selling.
Yeah, I've often wondered why it is on the ballot they don't just list Chicken Little for every single line of the ballot.
Well, that's who they all are. I think
that's pretty much it.
we just need to, instead of calling them Republicans or Democrats or even Libertarians or whatever, what we need to do is just have, these are all the Chicken Little candidates. Now, which perspective the world's going to end depends on which, the liberal or conservative spectrum, but it doesn't matter. They're the Chicken Little candidates. And
we don't even have to worry about whether it's the chicken or the egg that comes first. It's whether it's Chicken Little A or Chicken Little B who comes first.
It's the same dialogue. And I had another event this week where I was working out with several friends. And what I love about my gym environment where I work out is there's multiple walks of life. There's young people, old people, gay people, straight people, dumb people, smart people, white people, black people, all kinds of stuff, and we all get along incredibly well. In the gym, there's nothing divisive at all. It's amazing, that environment. The world should operate like the gym operates. And so I was walking by these two guys I know. They're Caucasian, 45-year-old men, been in the gym forever, worked their whole life, and so I heard them say, they were debating back and forth. One was for either candidate, and they both were saying, well, if this one wins, this is the end of our country. And I and knowing better, I couldn't shut up, and I had to just go by with a, really? I said, you really believe that? I said, I know it's so hard to hear this. I said, because it's not what you're being told. Neither candidate, if elected, is going to get much done, just like the last candidate that was elected didn't get much done.
Heresy!
No. If candidate A, and it doesn't matter, you can fill in the blank.
Of course.
But if candidate A wins, this candidate is going to take us to war with Russia. The other is going to take us to war with China. And it's like, really? I mean, come on. It's so silly that you're stuck on what is being told to you by the talking heads.
Well, it strikes me there's a very, very large synchronicity, if you will, between those two gentlemen in the gym and your client. Because they keep telling themselves over and over and over again. And plus, they also get reinforcement from what's being told to them on the news and on the online discussions and in the social media over and over and over again, how terrible and how awful the things are that these other candidates are going to do, the bad candidate is going to do to you. And when that person is elected, all heck is going to break loose, and things are just going to get worse and worse and worse. it's no different from the message of the client of yours who kept talking about how it's the boyfriend who's going to keep causing all these problems that somehow continue after 2 years after they broke up, which is an amazingly powerful ex-boyfriend, I have to say.
He's the Superman of all boyfriends, and what you've done, and I'm really glad that you actually brought. That was my point. The comparison of the two is the same thing. It's taking place where you're allowing an occupying thought to affect your reality, and the truth is, your occupying thought is not true. And as you and I think it was last week, I was sharing with everyone the blessing of a new foster child that I have in my home.
Oh, yes.
What an amazing young man he is. And I'm so impressed with him. He's brilliant, and we have an incredible time together. I've already am very fond of him. But one of the things that I've noticed with him, and I've worked with some very difficult children and adults over my career, he offers very little, if anything, that I've seen. Just again, a very together kid. But one of the things I had worked on very early with him is when he would say something negative, a few times about himself. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not good at this, or I'm not this, and I'm like, first of all, you're brilliant. And I said, I want that to be, you're brilliant. I'm helping him. I'm helping him change his inner dialogue to not allow the victimhood of what he's been through, whatever he's been through, a lot. Anytime you end up in the system like he's ended up, you had to go through a lot. But
sure.
And so he said, something's wrong with me, or I forget the wording of that. And I said, there is nothing wrong with you. We're stopping that. And so he's telling me when he almost slips, he goes, I know there's nothing wrong with me. I know there's nothing.
Oh, that's great.
And so we're working on that because first of all, that's how I see him. That's how I'm expecting him to be. That's what I'm witnessing take place. And he's now living up to that expectation for himself. And all three examples that I just offered, from my client to the guys in the gym to my foster son, it's just ways that you can, my foster son's using an example of how to change the narrative from the outside, whereas the others are allowing the narrative to create their reality, and the reality is the movie The Matrix was so incredibly right. It's just, it's just a different way, a little bit different, but the idea that the reality is being dictated to them, and you don't have to allow it to happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have to choose between a red pill and a blue pill in order to make that decision. All we have to do is just...
Ironically, the red or blue candidate is sort of where they're making.
Oh, well, that's true.
Yeah, so,
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I just envisioned that when you said it, but it in a sense that you're like you're saying, we don't have to actually take the pill. We as much as we have to just say, I get it. I understand that what exists. Anybody that's listening at this exact moment, I want you to take in consideration. First of all, finding us is relatively hard. Hopefully that changes in the future. But you stumbled across us somehow. They're at this moment, about halfway through our hour-long broadcast. You're listening to this moment.
And be sure to subscribe so you can continue to find us, because otherwise you probably won't find us again.
Exactly. It'll be a blessing if you do. But at this moment, everyone listening, including you and I, we have the ultimate power of control over our perspective. Not another creature on the planet has their perspective that remains in their control. We control that. Your reality is created by your perspective. And by allowing yourself to force your perspective into the positive things you have going, and allowing that that attacks the law of attraction, attaches to the law of attraction, and pulls more of that back of what you're wanting. If you're like my young lady client, if you spend 2 years of lacking and being lonely, and that's your sole focus, all you're inviting is lack and being lonely.
When you think about it, how could she be anything else if she's focusing on that? I
Right.
mean, even if you put the law of attraction aside, which is really impossible to do, but even if you were mentally to put it aside, how could she possibly focus on anything else if she's spending all her time focusing on the thing that she doesn't want?
Well, and I like what you said. Whether you're calling it the law of attraction or whether you're calling, it's what's occupying your thoughts.
Yeah.
let's forget the concept of the law of attraction for a moment. And if your sole thought is occupying, it's people, money issues. I know people that all they can think about is not having enough money. Well, how can you not have? That's it. You're not. You're not. When you're operating out of fear. Years ago, when I was gambling really bad in my middle of my gambling addiction, I had. I discovered a phenomenon that I don't understand. I do now, but at the time I didn't. When I first started in my downward spiral of gambling in the beginning, it was incredibly easy. I won all the time. I won and laughed at winning, and I didn't know how to win. I've won $1,000 by actually betting on the wrong dog race. And
I love that one. That's a good story.
I had a system where I bet this guy 5 football games on a Sunday. I said, look, I'll tell you what, you just pick all the games. Tell me which side you want. We'll bet $100 on each game. I won all the games. And so, I was laughing at how easy it was to do early. But as I became more drawn into it, and then I started looking at it more, and then I started losing, the laws of statistics, were catching up, and my perspective then started getting scared. In the end, Walt, I couldn't win. I probably went 2 months without any win of any type. I lost 10 football games out of 10 on a Saturday once.
Wow.
That's possible. If I'd have bet the other way, I'd have been 100%. I mean, it was amazing. Yeah, right. and so, but I was so scared, and the saying, scared money never wins in gambling.
Sure.
And scared money never wins, period. When you're down to your last $100, that $100 disappears incredibly fast. No more money showing up. And, I'm wanting desperately for our audience to understand that the power to change this stuff, it isn't as simple as, it's very frustrating. So I don't want to present it as you're dumb because you're not doing it easily. I'm wanting to present it is incredible. It's so easy. It's incredibly difficult.
Yes, that's a good description. That's
yes.
a very good description, because no matter, you don't have to be a gambling addict. It can be anything in your life that you're having trouble, that you're stuck on. And
yes.
You know what the answer is now, because you've listened to us. So we've told you it. The answer is you got to change your inner dialogue and stop repeating the old dialogue that just keeps reinforcing it. But the funny part is when you're facing, okay, here I am, I'm in my day, and all of a sudden there goes that dialogue again going on in my head. I've got to change it now. It's easy to do, right? Why can't I change it? But it's so easy, but I can't change it.
And that's the loop that gets played over and over. That's the human condition in my mind. That's the concept of why generations of poor people continue to be poor. That's why people who had their father leave when they were 2 become fathers who leave when their kids are 2. It oftentimes keeps repeating itself, because what you fear or what you think about is what you become and what you do.
Mm-hmm. And what you experience becomes what you do too, because most people have not learned yet how to take control of their own thought processes. It does take a little time. It takes some practice. You have to try some things. You have to use some of the different exercises that the gurus teach. Things as simple as just being grateful for stuff that is in your life that you like. Appreciating the outdoors, appreciating people who are great in your life, appreciating your job, or if you don't like your job, the part that you do like. If there's something about your health that you don't like, you appreciate the part that you do like. If there's something about your wealth that you don't like, you appreciate the part that you do like. And just going through that exercise in all its different forms over and over and over and over again, that's how we learn how to take control of our own thoughts. The funny part is, I don't know if this was true for you, Joel, when you first started. When I first started, I was amazed at how short my attention span was. My attention span was about the same as that of a flea. I mean, I would notice and be excited about the fact that I'd actually noticed it. I would notice, I'm stuck in that negative thought process again. Okay, now I've got to apply something positive. So let's see, what can I apply? Well, I'm glad I live in this house. Great. Okay, I'm done. And that was it. The thought process was done. And now I'm right back onto the old, stream again. It takes some time to actually start to believe that, yeah, I can regularly throughout the minute and then throughout the hour, I can actually regularly stick to what I want to be thinking about and not let that subconscious mind just keep taking over.
Well, and that's part of the development of whether I almost equate it to learning how to meditate. When I first started trying to meditate, I could not last 8 seconds probably before my mind would wander. And I eventually built it up where I can meditate pretty well for 20 to 25 minutes, which is great in my world. Mm-hmm. But it's the same thing like you're talking about with the attention span. Yes, I can give a moment of gratitude, but when I immediately fall back behind the gratitude into the same old way of negative thinking or even neutral thinking, not even realizing that I'm negative, then it's sort of you can't expect 7 seconds of a positive to change the day. It just it's overpowered by the negative.
It reminds me too. Abraham Hicks talks about the duration that it takes before things start to happen, and they say that if you want to change your thought process, change it by focusing on it for 16 seconds. And if you want to make it a permanent shift so that the flow starts to go, focus on it for 64 seconds. Now, I don't know where 16 and 64 came from, but those are the numbers they gave. So I remember starting to try it. And 16 seconds was a long time. 64 seconds, I mean, it's 1 minute and 4 seconds, but when you're trying something new, that's an amazingly long time.
Oh yes. It's, especially for those who have attention issues or it's tough for anybody, but for me
I've never had attention issues, believe it or not. I've never had ADHD, but hey, I still had a problem with this, let me tell you.
That's what I'm saying. So people that don't have it find it difficult. Those that do have attention, my 16 seconds is probably your 30 minutes. So
it seems like that, doesn't it? It just seems like, oh my God, is this ever going to end?
Right. So, but the exciting piece of all of this, when we start talking about, all that takes place in this for example, this young lady wasted 2 years of her life and instantly it happens as fast as you can allow it to happen. And she's already had the best day of her life, in the last couple of years, maybe ever. And all because she's living, she took the chains off. The chains of this, we have the key. We operate with the key inside of us at all times. Mm-hmm. And, we are our own jailer. And that is a very, very tough pill to swallow because it's so much easier to blame the boyfriend or the presidential candidates or the system. But reality is us.
Blame the employer, blame the society, blame the economy, blame your spouse, blame your kids, blame your parents. It's so much easier. I'll see people say, well, I hear people talking all the time, and just in general, and somebody said something the other day about how bad the economy is, and I'm going, is it really? I'm not trying to be smart. Is it really bad? I don't know. Maybe my personal economy is not bad, and that's so I'm grateful for that. So I'm not trying to be judging of other people's situation, but I'm like, is it bad because you think it's bad, or is it really bad? And I know there's challenges for many people, so I'm not trying to say that every situation that is very easy. It just comes to your perspective, and once you start down that path, it makes a big difference. Well, actually, also it's an opportunity because the one mechanism we're given to basically apply the law of attraction and to know when we're applying it to our benefit and when we're applying it to our detriment is our feelings, our emotional system. So that when stuff feels bad, that's a clue that we're not applying ourselves in a way that's most beneficial to ourselves. And when we're feeling good, that's the clue that what we're thinking about is the stuff that is most beneficial to ourselves. So when you're saying that the economy is bad, what you're really saying is, I don't feel good about the economy. That's an indicator. That's an indicator that what you're focusing on isn't the right thing to focus on.
Right. And that's that during the Great Depression, there were many people that became millionaires, and they
Which
did
seems
it.
counterintuitive.
It does, but because so many people were focused on the negatives, the people that were able to sit back and there's several books of people who were poor before the Depression who became wealthy during the Depression, and their attitude was different. It was looking at it from a different perspective, a totally different perspective, and they brought more stuff in there. You know, it's just such an amazing thing. You know, I go to the opportunities that exist. I mean, one of the things I've told this story before, and it goes way back about this gentleman who was from a family that they had money, and it was really, really a great family, and he wanted to go out on his own from his family and do better than they did. So he heard about this bank in Cisco, Texas that was for sale, and he wanted to go buy this bank. And he was going to impress his family by getting in the banking business. So he goes down there and he stays at a hotel across the way from the bank, and he gets to know the staff at the hotel very well, excited and very positive, supporting. He said, well, boy, we hope you buy the bank. We hope you move here. And he really appreciates their support. And so he was there for a couple of days preparing for the meeting. So he goes to the meeting to try to buy the bank. And they just couldn't come to an agreement. It just wasn't going to happen. He was very disappointed. He had traveled all that way. This is many years ago. I think it's like 1919. All this took place, and he was very disappointed. So he went back to the hotel, and they were consoling him. He said, well, I'm going to go back a failure. And the conversations led. The hotel manager was there, and he said, I know this isn't why you came here, but this hotel is for sale. and he started talking, and the hotel he ended up, making a long story as short as possible, he ended up buying the hotel. The man's name was Conrad Hilton.
Conrad Hilton. Yeah, I knew that story. Yeah.
And the truth is the bank actually during the Depression went bankrupt. The hotel obviously created a multi-billion-dollar fortune for the family. And that is an example of, when you look, there's opportunity. When you get stuck on only one outcome, you're destined to be the fate of that outcome. But there's multiple streams of outcomes out there.
And by the way, the fact that we were talking earlier about how difficult it can seem doesn't mean it has to be difficult. That's one slice of how people can experience stuff. But again, this comes down to our choice. We can also choose to get through it quickly. We can actually choose to make that shift quickly, and that's what your 27-year-old client did. She made the shift within the course of a day and changed her mindset so dramatically that not only did she take your advice and have a good time, but she had an amazingly good time, the best time she ever had, she described it. Well, that's because she made that big shift all at once and stuck to it. And
yes.
It actually isn't hard to do unless you decide that it's hard to do. So in a sense, when we were talking earlier about how hard it is, I was doing that just because I've been through that and I know others have gone through it too, so I was commiserating. But by the same token, it isn't that hard to do.
Well, the idea that I have always tried to realize, and I still don't do it perfectly, is the stuff that I create that I dread, I make it so much worse than it really is.
Yes.
And I know
I'm a champion at that.
Yes.
I should have a welterweight belt.
Well, I love my job. I love the fact that I do counseling. I'm very in tune with it. Most of my clients are very uplifting. I am excited when a session's over. I am a horrible guy when it comes to detail work like taxes and paperwork, and all of that stuff is just very frustrating for me. And the idea that I have to do detailed stuff. So, and with any job, you have some of that. So once a week, I have to make sure my notes are in order. I have to make sure my deposits are in order. I have to balance my banking account. And I have these things to do. And for a long time, I dreaded them and put them off until the very end. Mm-hmm. I've implemented a new technique to take the things I dread the most and make that the first thing I get done.
Oh, really?
And it helps because, first of all, it's never as bad as I'm making it out to be. It never. it's always something that I get done much quicker when I'm focused and when I'm able to do it. But when I'm dreading it, if I say, well, I'll just do it Friday night instead of Monday morning. So I get up early Monday morning. I get this done. It usually takes me about 45 minutes to an hour is all it takes. And it's done. And I feel good about it. So I'm changing my perspective over it. But for so long, those are the things that it just horribly invaded my serenity or my peace because, oh, God, I hate doing that. Oh, God. It's just making it worse.
It's interesting that you mentioned the idea of doing it first and getting it out of the way because I've gone through similar kinds of thought processes saying, okay, I'm going to get it out of the way. And yet I find that under certain circumstances, I'll just let it drag on anyway, and I won't get anything done that day. What I have to remind myself is the second part of what you said. It only took 45 minutes.
Right.
This thing that is that I dread so much seems like it's going to take hours. But when I actually sit down and do it, it only takes 45 minutes. So when I start out my day, not only saying, okay, I'm going to get this thing done so it's out of the way, I also remind myself, oh, and by the way, it only takes 45 minutes.
And one of the things that I am so grateful for so many things about, but especially since my foster care child and I call him just from now on, I refer to him, my son has come here. I've had to really step up my efficiency. Going from being single and really just having a very leisurely. I got to get up and be at the office at 10. I got to go to the gym today. I mean, get this done, whatever. To school, he needs to be out the door at 7:20 for school. I have a boom, boom, boom doctor's appointment. Boom, boom, boom. So a lot of people view that as, why would you invite all that into your house? And I'm like, I'm thriving on the structure of it all. I love the structure. The structure for me is where I thrive the most. So I have become more efficient. So if I have a window of time, I need to fill that time doing something productive or I'll never get everything done. Instead of waiting it's a silly example, but instead of waiting to the end of the day to empty the dishwasher, I need to empty the dishwasher while he's eating breakfast, I empty the dishwasher. I'm much more efficient now. So getting stuff done, I know I need to get it done because this week is going to have a lot of new opportunities, new challenges, and I got to be prepared for them, and I don't have time to be putting things off. So it's helped me a lot in that area.
And isn't it interesting how it's so much easier to help ourselves on this type of thing when we're helping somebody else do it? Because that's what you're doing. You're helping your son. Yes. You're helping structure yourself in life so that he can move ahead and get the things he needs to done to go to school and all the other stuff. And that helps you.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
And it does. Or I could look at that, the burden of it all. I could look at it that way. It's a real burden that I have to do this.
Because in that circumstance, you want to be as unhappy as possible.
Right. And so
it works.
It works. And, I find the fact that he's here has brought a lot of, I feel, and I've never felt old or felt like I've lacked energy. I've always had plenty of energy, but I even feel more energy now. His positive, solid, upbeat energy, his silly humor and all that, it is really very positive in my life. So the stuff that goes along with it that some people would perceive as negative, like increased structure, having to be more efficient, I don't think my house will ever be clean again. I mean, totally.
I saw what you posted on Facebook. It was like the tornado had come through.
Yeah, and so does that matter? I mean, does it even matter? And
apparently not, because you obviously posted it with joy, so it didn't matter at all.
It didn't matter at all, and there would be plenty of time to paint the walls when he's grown and moved on to college and. There'll be plenty of time to paint the walls and fix the holes and get new floors. Whatever you need to do, there'll be plenty of time for that. Right now, we're enjoying this process. So that's a positive, Walt, and that's what all we're doing. Live with every situation has a positive. I had a brief conversation. I'm going to go visit a gentleman who's in jail this next week. I had a brief conversation with his mother, and his mother had gotten this young man my book and sent it to him while he was in jail. Mm-hmm. And he sent her an incredible letter that is the first hope she's heard from him in a long time. He was so down and depressed. Well, he wrote this letter that she read to me, which put a lump in my throat, about how he has 9 more months in jail. And he wakes up every day and he says, I'm in a place where I'm safe. I have 3 meals a day. Now, admittedly, they're not great meals, but it's certainly not no meals. And I have my medical stuff taken care of. I have a bright future. I have a family who loves me. And she said he has started, while in jail, looking at the positives that exist in jail. He's a different person because he never understood the law of it. His thoughts were creating his reality. He's the same person at jail where he was on suicide watch every day, who right now is earned the privilege to work in the kitchen, which is a big leap. And he's excited about what happened when he gets out for the first time.
That's huge. Because it's huge on 2 levels. First, he will get out one way or the other.
Right.
But the way he's going to get out now, he's going to get out charging full speed ahead. And if he came out the other way, he would be coming out probably heading right back to the gutter that got him there in the first place.
Exactly. And that's the thing that is so great to see, is you have this young man who sees his situation and was destined, due to his thinking pattern, to go back into an environment and probably create a scenario which he would definitely be going back to jail because he had no vision,
right?
Or he had no goal. And now he's excited about, when I get out, this is going to happen. He's also talking to the other inmates about, the law of attraction. She's ordered him the book, The Secret, and the Seth Speaks stuff, all that, and he's just eating it up and understanding. He said, I've searched for this my entire life. I've been praying to God for all my life. It has never felt like the right answer until right now. And I'm not taking credit for that. He saw the law of attraction with my book and is doing that. So I have the privilege of going and visiting him next week and really sort of reinforcing where he's at. But he's making a huge difference in an environment that most people can never imagine has the potential to be positive.
Well, as you often point out, I think you sometimes do it on a daily basis on your Facebook posts, he came to the realization what you've always said. Your excuses are no longer valid, and they never were in the first place.
Right. And that hurts. There's people that actually unfriend me when I post that sometimes.
I'm sure that's true.
I love doing it.
In fact, if your 27-year-old client had seen that, she probably would have unfriended you.
Unfriended me. And so this idea that once you hold that accountability, your excuses are not valid. I'm sorry. They don't mean anything, except they give you the excuse not to perform. Yes, a lot of stuff happens. I'm not minimalizing what happens. Your resilience and your attitude is in your control. You do that. You're in charge of that. And once you really start living that, it's an amazing way to live.
And if you feel like you should still be able to make excuses, all right, well, okay, make your excuse. You're excused. Now what?
Exactly.
What comes next? Because otherwise you're stuck on making excuses.
Well, one of this week's adventures, and it did not affect me in the remote way the last time this happened, but I had another Comcast episode this week where my ongoing situation with Comcast, everything was fine. The last time it was really Comcast was part of a bad day. When they finally got it straightened out, and my previous month's bill was $141, exactly what I agreed it would be. Everything was great. This month's bill, nothing changed, was $378.
Ouch.
So clearly we had a problem.
Just a slight one, yes.
Yeah, so I get on the phone, and I'm speaking with the Comcast, and I end up finding the solutions department, which has more authority.
They have a solutions department?
Well, that's that. They just recently named that. It used to be called the retention department, but they've renamed it the solution department.
Okay.
I
it was a solution for them. I get it.
Exactly. So I got on the phone, and I had a much different attitude this time, and I was able to. It did take me a little while to get it resolved, and when I hung up, I laughed. What was the difference in this call and the last call, where nothing was different? They were just as inefficient as they've ever been.
Yeah.
They weren't any really much more helpful than they've ever been. I had to wait forever for this stuff to happen. My attitude was the difference in this call, and I wasn't affected by this call at all. And there was no downward spiral. It was just part of a day. I was able to check it off the list of things to get done. It's going to be handled. And I have a guy's name and number and direct number and a supervisor's name. So if it didn't handle, I'll be able to deal with it in the future. Wow, that's such a different way than the last call went. And all that changed, Walt, was my perspective.
All.
That's all.
That's everything.
That's everything, exactly. So the underlying within that is, having learned from the last time, I didn't need to make that call in the wrong mindset. I needed to make that call in the positive resolution mindset that I want to get this resolved. It's no big deal, regardless of they're not personally attacking me. The guys at Comcast, they don't, they're making a living like everyone else. The people I'm talking to are not bad people. Their system is a horrible system, but the people aren't bad people. And I try to remember that. People you're going to be dealing with that cause frustration to you, they're operating within the boundaries of what they operate. There's good people, there's bad people, there's positive people, there's negative people. At the end of the day, your response to them is your response and in your control.
And by the way, it's not like their system is actually truly horrible. I mean, going through all that stuff can be very horrible. But hey, the thing works most of the time, so it can't really. Absolutely. It's not actually horrible. It's just when things aren't working the way you want them to, that's when it seems like they're horrible.
Well, their customer service system is horrible. It is. What I mean by that is they don't. The people aren't. But the way it's set up, how they have to transfer you multiple times, how you have to. It's not. Horrible is a strong word. It's not streamlined in an efficient manner.
It's not efficient. Yeah, that I think
exactly.
is true.
That's true. Whereas I will be honest with you, I love the Comcast quality of the show. They have this voice remote now that I just say what I want to happen and it does automatically. Used to have to program a remote to program a show. I just say, record this show. It'll record it. Amazing. So I love their product. It's an incredible product.
By the way, I got to tell you, it's not Comcast. It's Frontier. It's a fiber optic internet provider service. So it's not identical to a cable service, but it's similar. And this is an odyssey that I went through over the last 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. Which very gratefully it ended about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. But there was like a 2-week period there where I was going nuts. What happened was we have the way we're set up here. We've got a TV that's hooked in through a Wi-Fi type connection. And that Wi-Fi connection went out. So, okay, got to diagnose that. And as you've alluded to a few times, I actually have some technical skills, so I was able to, solve some of it. But some of it I just couldn't figure out a way to fix. So, obviously, I had to call their customer service. And it was very much the same kind of thing, being passed along, click, hand off, hold, please, all that kind of stuff. And then when you talk to somebody, you didn't really seem to get anywhere. Well, funny thing happened. When I had to do numerous phone calls over the course of about a 2-week period. When I made the phone calls and was not feeling good about it, I would get the usual run-of-the-mill, being passed along, nobody really has an answer kind of a situation. When I got myself into a better frame of mind, I would tend to get better results. And then there was one day where I got myself into a really good frame of mind starting off the day, and then the problem recurred, and I said, why is it happening again? I don't understand. But this time I stayed in that positive frame of mind. Got on the phone with them once more, and they said, well, we'll send somebody out there because this is there was a chain of events that made it possible for them to send somebody out without actually charging me $150 to have them come out. So they came out. Come to find out that as I had been going through all the steps of trying to test things and unplug and plug things and all that to make sure everything worked, I had plugged something into the wrong port.
Oh.
Now, it was a perfectly innocent mistake, and it came from, essentially trying to follow the directions of 15 different people who are trying to help me figure stuff out, and, oh, yeah, I'll do that, sure, I'll do that, and somewhere along the way, I just plugged it into the wrong port. He plugged it into the right port, and within minutes, it was working again, and has worked ever since. Interesting thing, though, I didn't get that information until I was in a positive frame of mind.
Absolutely.
That's very significant stuff right there. The important information about the mistake I made didn't even show up until I got into a positive frame of mind. Well, actually, it was probably there all along, but I couldn't possibly see it because I was in a negative frame of mind.
I had a conversation actually before we recorded today that with a client who was having a very difficult time hearing what I was saying, and he kept saying, "But you don't understand." And I had to stop, and I had to repeat for him word for word in detail what he had told me, and said, "I heard every word you said. The problem is you're so convinced that I haven't heard you that you're not listening to me." And once I could click his brain, help him click his brain to that side, he said, "Oh, okay. So he's fine. It worked out well." But a lot of that is this internal stuff when you're convinced of one outcome, like you're talking about, or you're in that negative, I gotta blah, 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 blah. And it isn't until you get to that mindset where you can truly hear what is wrong or hear what's right in this case.
Right.
And so I'm excited that these tools exist. We don't put ourselves in a position to use them all the time, but once we do, what an incredible way to live, because we do live in such a world where there's an abundance and there's so much available and so much information, and there's a lot of positive learning. And I actually got to see a microscopic view of what an endorphin looks like and how it operates in the brain. And I'm like, let's take a moment to realize I just watched an endorphin at work.
That's pretty special, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, at what time in history, while we knew about endorphins, at what time in history have we had the technology to witness an endorphin at work? What an incredible thing. Now, most people dismiss that as whatever, but I'm fascinated by that. I'm so pleased to be alive at a time where I can watch an endorphin work.
It's truly remarkable. I mean,
yes.
There was a time when that was considered inconceivable.
Well, yeah, in fact, it was just a hypothesis. Endorphins were a hypothesis for a long time, and it moved into science, and now we can see it. But and the reason I even use that example is there's so much out there to tune into. It's amazing that we have been conditioned. We can be conditioned to tune into the negative, but the amazing part to me is we can tune into so much positive, be fascinated. I said last week, and I continue this week, I make it a point to say wow once a day. I want to be wowed by something once a day. And today with my endorphins, I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's a big wow.
That's a big wow.
Well, here's another wow. A really big wow is kind of along the line of what we've just been describing here. There is a tremendous consistency in life. And we are very good. We have been trained. We have trained ourselves very effectively to consistently get negative results in our lives. Our society trains us on that. Our parents train us on that. Our schools train us on that. Our work environments train us on that. Our friends, our family. I mean, you just name it. It's an endless list that trains us on that. We're very good at it. Here's the remarkable thing. Look how consistent we are. The
Absolutely.
Consistency is unbelievable. Yes. And to have consistently bad results that come out of it. That actually, I found that at one point in my life to be reassuring. Because what it told me was, yeah, I know I'm on the wrong track here, but at least I know that being on the wrong track will consistently keep you on the wrong track. Now I know the universe makes sense. It actually does have a rationality to it. So now it's just a question of learning how to stay on the positive track.
Walt, I tell you, one of the most reinforcing things this week, and it actually happened on the opposite side of the law of attraction for me, but it wasn't a horrible thing. My son had a cold, and he happened to have a doctor's appointment scheduled that day anyway. So we had a 2:30 appointment. I get there, and this is his first time at the doctor, so I'm having that initial fill out all the paperwork. Yeah, right. And so I was waiting for her. After you sign in, I know I got to go back to the desk. So I'm just standing. So I'm standing, and I'm thinking. So I say to him, I'll just sit down, but as soon as I sit down, she's going to call me. Literally, the moment my butt hit the seat. She said, "Mr. Elston?" I'm like, and I laughed, and he goes, "Did you know she was going to?" I said, I actually created that. and I explained it to him, but he was fascinated that he somehow thought I had some. I said, well, it is real, but it isn't what you're thinking. I didn't.
It's called the law of attraction, and unfortunately we're out of time, but it's been a pleasure as usual, and we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.